Andrea. Thank you for joining me today on the Happy Whole You podcast.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, we did an Instagram live and that was so much fun. We did that like last week or so. And now we're going to have more of a full length version of who you are and all the beautiful gems that you have to offer the world. But first, can you share with the audience who you are, just a little bit about yourself? And yeah, start
Yeah, sure. Well, hi, everybody.
there.
Uh, Everybody out there listening. My name is Andrea Gebhart, and I live in Bakersfield, California. And I'm a mom. Like that's like always the first thing that I'm a mom. I have four incredible kids. Like I have a kiddo in college, which blows my mind. He actually came home this past weekend.
Aw.
And it's so neat. Like you just find yourself, even when you have a baby, you like stare at them all the time because you're just like, oh, look at you don't want to miss a single nose crinkle, like
Right.
you know. And then when they go off to college, they come back, and I just found myself in that same position of just like watching him, everything he did, like seeing this like little man version and adult version of him kind of operating, It was just he was like, "Mom, why are you staring at me?" He's like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
But yeah, I have four kiddos. So one in college, I've got two in high school, one in junior high. So a single mom to four teenagers is not an easy task at all. It's a lot of management and balance and doing the best that you can do, realizing that you're in the space of it all at the in the first, like doing it for the first time with them. So there's a lot of grace that we have to give around around our house. But my background's actually education. So I was a teacher turned administrator with big goals of going really far in education, wanting to be superintendent in my hometown district, and then go on to be like Secretary of Education for the United States of America, which I know sounds really crazy, but it's really what I wanted to do was like
I love it.
reform the practice of education and really, have a hand in kind of like shaping the evolution of our educational system. Because I have some really strong beliefs there. Who knows? That story may not be over. Uh, and in 2013, I kind of switched gears and pursued an entrepreneurial path by way of wanting to really just be more present for my children. Kind of realizing that the the greatest gift that we can give our kids is legacy, and it's not so much what we leave them with, but what we leave within them. And so, if I wasn't home or present as a mom because I was so busy chasing those career goals, that I just felt like it didn't say a whole lot about the life I wanted to live and share with them. And so that journey over the last 11 and a half years has been pretty incredible from, leading some really successful organizations to linking arms with John Maxwell and getting to serve in the advisory council and create leadership content that's been shared around the world to, you know, launching a leadership podcast and developing a personal development platform for teachers. So many hats that I wear, but all of it is in you know, joint like momentum to just kind of like serve people
Yeah.
at their level.
Wow. I love that. So share with our listeners, what was that like to go, like you were in education, which is, most people would say that's a safe career, right? You get tenured and pretty good, secure income, especially in California and in Bakersfield where we live. They don't pay their teachers. I mean, they pay their teachers well here, considering, it's not bad. I mean, I'm from Michigan. Have looked at different places to teach, so we're not doing bad here. But what was it within you that gave you the confidence to say, you know what, I'm gonna actually step back and step into a new way of life? Because that's not the quote unquote safe or easy thing to do. So I just have to recognize, like, bravo to you for doing that. But I mean, that's not an easy thing for someone to do. And especially like you have four kids, and there's all these boxes that we get to check when we're in education, insurance, retirement, security. How did you navigate that?
It's a really it's really a loaded question because as you ask that, the thing I start thinking about is my mom. And I told her, I was like, hey, so I think I'm gonna leave my role as a principal and pursue, this entrepreneurial venture full time. And I remember her like looking at me thinking and saying, having a midlife crisis. I was like, slow your roll, mom. I'm 30. I'm not in midlife yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, calm down. But I think that I think that, it was just coming from a place of knowing I have a lot of ambition and a lot of drive, and I've always just had this mentality that when I set my mind to something, when I set my eyes on something, there's just this knowing that I can accomplish it because I'd proven that to myself over and over in my life, like hard work, dedication, commitment, going all out, going all in, never really approaching anything in kind of like a halfway mindset. And so here I was at 30, like 3 master's degrees, these big dreams, like already running a school. Like most administrators, you're not in an administrative role, usually that typically that early. So
Yeah.
I started my part-time venture into like the entrepreneurial world in conjunction of working full time. And I think why most people start a side hustle, right? We want to make more income, life a little easier. And I just gave myself permission to fail and learn simultaneously while doing something I was really great at. And I think it was just kind of like not putting pressure on myself for it to turn into anything spectacular, but to give permission to myself to just become proficient in what it was going to take to be able to get to a point to scale it even larger. And when I hit that point, to me, yeah, and everybody was like, "You're crazy." Yeah, you're walking away from health insurance. Like, oh my gosh, what about retirement? Oh my gosh, you've already invested so much in this career choice and everything that you do. And at the end of the day, it came down to something very simple. I absolutely loved what I did. I love education. I have a huge heart for kids. I'm very passionate about that career, but I also love the heck out of my own family. And at the
Mhm.
end of the day, I wasn't who I promised myself I would be as a mom to them because I was so burnout and so tired from just, like, running the rat race and jumping the hoops and just doing the backside of education. It's not
Yeah.
all cute little cutouts and fun calendars and treat days. It's
Yeah. Well, especially when you're the principal, because 'cause you're at, like, all the things.
yeah.
It's like after school, and then that's the other thing is, like, your kids have after school stuff, and so it's finding that balance, and yeah, I mean, that's yeah, that's a lot, but you still are in education because of what you're doing. You're literally leading and teaching, and it's just in a different way. Um One thing that I love that you said is, like, you were doing this while you had your career, and you allowed yourself to fail, and I think all too often is we make things black and white. It's like, "Oh, for me to do this, I have to do that," and I love the idea of leveraging, like, where we're at, which is how I actually started building this company on the side was, like, I was leveraging where I was at, and there's so much value in that, so I never wanna dismiss to people, like, it's not easy doing both, right?
Oh,
Because you probably found that actually it's almost like because it always takes something, it's like, yeah, you have your career and you have your family, and now I'm building this on the side, and it actually takes a little bit more away from my family for a short period of time until I choose which one am I gonna step into.
yep.
And then it's like it's like a recalibration. I don't know if you experienced that, but I definitely experienced that quite a bit.
Oh, oh, yeah. I mean, it's basically the law of the trade-off, right? And that's why, most people we go to a job and we trade time for money with the promise of money later without working, right? That's really why we it's this
That's what we think.
the promise of getting paid for not working someday because we put in enough. It's just the law of the trade-off, and it applies to anything else. And oftentimes, when we realize there are more things in life that we want, usually what we want is going to require, like, that's the requirement. What we want is gonna be the requirement. So if we want more time, the requirement is gonna be more time of the initial investment. If we want more money, like people who are investing in starting businesses and, starting your practice, doing all that. If you wanna make more money, it's gonna require money. Like those are the things that we have to realize. And you're either gonna pay now where you are or you're gonna pay later. And for me, I wanted more time with my kids. And so for a short period of time, yes, like, I mean, I had to make the most of the moments that we had to be able to create what I really wanted in the future, and that's the life that we live today where, if my kids aren't feeling well, I don't have to call anybody. I mean, I remember the days when I would sneak my kids into work when they were sick and they would sleep under my desk. Like, I remember
Yeah.
one of my
Yeah.
students the other day, and we were just catching up on life, and he's just getting out of the military, and I'm telling him how proud I am. He's transitioning to CHP, like all these things. And he was like, "Do you he was like, "How's your son? How old is he?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's in college." He's like, "That makes me feel old." I was like, "Standing here next to you makes me feel old." Oh, you remember he's like, "I always remember when you brought your kids to work sick and
Mhm.
how they would sleep under your desk and how they would always pop their hands out and, like, wave at us and make us laugh." Like, that was what I was doing. And so,
Yeah.
I decided to give up a little bit more to create the lifestyle where I don't have to miss out, and if my son in college is like, "Mom, like, I'm having a day, can you, like, drive down to Long Beach? Can we, like, hang out?" I get to do that. I
Mhm.
get the time. I never thought I would be able to be as present as I have been as a mom, so the trade-off was absolutely worth it.
Yeah. That is so good. I I love that, and it's like, for if you want more of something, it's gonna take more of that up front. I've never heard it worded that way, and yeah, that's so fantastic. It's like, if you want the good health, it's gonna take you a period of time to get in shape, and you're gonna have to kind of invest a little bit more upfront until you get into that maintenance program. And I love how you compared it with finances too. Same thing. Like, people think that I find people think that, success happens overnight, but like with your story, you're like, yeah, I've spent the last 11 years building this and this entrepreneurship. And, you know, we always underestimate what we can do in a decade. And we, like, over project what we need to do in, like, the next 60, 90 days. And so I think, like, it's that mindset of playing the long game, which I feel like you're doing. Like, you're like, "Yeah, I'm 30, okay, and I can step into something new, and I can create something new, and I can build this." And it's the consistency that is, like, yields us so many great results, and it's that compound interest.
It is. It really is, and it's one of the things I love to tell people and wanna remind people of is, like, never put an expiration date on your potential.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Because so many people are like, "Oh, well, if I don't lose 30 pounds by this, then this doesn't work, or I just can't lose weight, or if this doesn't happen for me in this period." We always put a like a expiration date, and
Mhm.
you know, what we forget to, like, factor into that equation is experience, like, learning, trial and error, the tests that kinda come along the way that develop grit for you over time. Every time somebody runs into a challenge, they're like, "I just don't know," and the challenge makes them question things. I'm like, "This is a sign that you have to keep going because every little speed bump is like that next level of foundation that's required for you to learn the things you need to know to be successful at that next level. But too many people get knocked out by the first hurdle. They do.
Yeah.
It's like, "Ow, that hurt."
No.
Let me go back to my basic life and settling in struggle and accepting, every circumstance that comes my way to realize that I can design my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, things are gonna hurt and there's gonna be hurdles. Why do you think you have been able to develop that grit that you had even, like, 15 years ago, even to be a 30-year-old as a principal? Like, What what was it within you? Have you always been this way? Are there any defining moments that you were like, "I'm gonna be a badass, I'm gonna be unapologetic about it, and I'm gonna just do my life." I mean, because really, like, you have that it factor, and, like, where does that come from?
I think it honestly, and thank you. That's really kind of you to point out. I think it honestly comes from just like my, coming from such struggle as a kid, like single parent, like dad, in and out of prison and not involved and like all of those things. And being in a position in a place where our life was just always so chaotic. It was so chaotic growing up. And I mean, when I was young, when I was in the midst of it, it was like fun and crazy. Like sometimes
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes we did it.
You don't know anything different, right?
There were lots of people at the house on the weekend, like parties and whatever. Like it was just always chaotic. And we were even homeless for like a period of a year. I didn't even attend all of second grade. And we were couch surfing or hotel surfing or car sleeping or whatever it was. And I remember my mom's parents got in touch with her and like, hey, we need you to come home. Like we need help. And it was because my grandfather had been diagnosed with like stage 4 cancer. He knew it was
Mm.
a certain time to live. And my mom's mom was struggling with Alzheimer's, and he had been her caretaker. So that moment of time, which, to them was just like this dire moment, became a saving grace for our family because they called my mom to like come and bring us girls with them. So we had a place to live. We had all these things. My grandfather passed away right away, but my mom became the caretaker of my grandma who lived to my senior year in high school. And it was that drive. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was that drive from Bakersfield into Wasco. And if you're local, you know what I'm talking about. It's Highway 43. And there used to be this sign that said Wasco, a nice place to live. Um, and I remember coming in on that road, sitting in my grandpa's truck. I remember the smell of the dashboard and like the aged interior. I remember the slight scent of like cigar on his clothing. And I was smooshed up against the side of like the Ford window because we were all packed into the single cab. And I remember looking out the window, seeing this sign, thinking, I never want my life to be like this. I remember distinctly having that like thought, like, I am not like, I didn't even know who this man was. Like, we're moving to this new town. We had nothing. Like, it was just so crazy. And I just remember that moment being a time in my life. I was 9, by the way,
Yeah.
where I made this kind of like catalytic decision, and it's almost like that decision created this outside perspective of recognizing all the things that were just kind of like hard and not normal. And then as I started to develop friends with married families and stable lives, and it made me realize even more like, oh my gosh, like what a mess this is all kind of been, and started like being really attuned to like how what was different about these families, what was different about these people that I was now being exposed to that had them on this different trajectory in life. And it was like they were hardworking and they were committed. They went to church, all these different things. And it just became this idea that I was gonna create something better, and everything just kind of got dropped in that bucket of how can I make it better, be better, because I don't want it to be
Yeah.
like this,
Yeah.
you know? And I had an amazing teacher in 5th grade who grabbed me by my shoulders one day and was like, she told me straight out, like, your life that you let have, the house that you live in, how things are going. And I think she kind of knew I was like the super poor kid. She just told me, she was like, this doesn't have to be your story. And I remember her getting eye level and grabbing a hold of my shoulders. And she was just like, you can absolutely do anything you want to do with your life. And it just poured this confidence and this idea of like, I can do anything I want to do. And that, I mean, I went on to do anything I wanted to do. I want to win state science fair. I did. I want to be cheerleading captain. I was. I want to become a state truck runner. I was. Like, I want to graduate college in 3 years because who does that? I did,
Yeah.
you know? Like, I was like, it just became this identity that I created. You know how they say, like, when we talk about identity, like, first it starts out as an idea, and then it becomes a habit, and then it becomes who we are. And I just became the person who became good at whatever they wanted to do. And that's not, I hope that doesn't come across as me like, toot toot, I'm a little horn here.
Girl, no,
Oh,
you get to toot your horn. This is something men don't ever say what you like, "Oh, I don't wanna." Like, I was on a call the other day, and I'm like, "We do not have to apologize for being great and fantastic and amazing and stepping into who we're meant to be." So, girl, you just preach. Yeah, I that's why you're on the podcast, and, it's like, yeah, because you're extraordinary and you're amazing, and you know what I love? I love you describing. I'm, like, in that car with you as you share that, and you're pressing your face against the wall or the window and all that, because it's moments like that in our life and that are really defining when our analytical mind starts taking over. Like 8, 9 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old is when our analytical mind takes over and we start realizing that's when we have the first moments of something's not right here, or I'm not sure about this, or what are they doing? And we really like we come out of that theta state, that play state, and we're recognizing things for the first time. And it's interesting because I remember moments when I was a kid too. It's like we have this awareness where we're like, I'm not going to have that. I'm going to have this. Or I want, and we don't know exactly what it looks like and all the steps, but we know from a little being inside of us that that's not for me and I'm going to choose differently. And then it takes something like a fifth grade teacher to give you permission for what's possible. And that's why I think like it's so powerful how one conversation can change the trajectory of our entire lives because it's like it opens up something new in us or it unlocks the thing that was always there, which I
Right.
think is really, really powerful. So yeah, what a great story. I love that. And I think honestly, like I think the struggle that many have, even like I know I'm the way I am because of my upbringing for sure. I wasn't the kid with the new shoes and the new clothes and all this stuff, but it was like that hard work and that grit and that, I'm gonna find my way in the world. Um, and it's those struggles that set us up, and you said it best. It's like everything is like a stepping stone, and we're supposed to go through those trials and tribulations and those challenges to get us to where we're at.
Yeah.
All right. So, as you're working with people and you're doing leadership training, what do you find is like a very common theme that like people get in their own way? Like I mean, because doing what you do and, like, you see things like we all do, right? Like, I can see things probably in you where you have some blinders up, right? My coach sees things in me and tells me things because I have my blinders up. What are common blinders that you're finding that people have up where they're and is preventing them from stepping into their greatness and who they're supposed to be?
This is like such a complicated question because I feel like it's three things that kind of like all hang out together. I call them like the dream bullies.
Okay, alright.
You can tell I was a teacher. There's always an acronym. There's always an
Love it.
but I call them like little dream bullies. And the first one is like lack of belief. And that's normally the first bully that we meet is this lack of belief. And it's where you just question yourself, you question your worthiness, you question your capabilities, and it's when I hear people say things, well, I don't think it's like that. I don't think I can. Like we go back to like the whole Thomas the Train,
Mm,
kind of mentality that
yeah.
people carry. And it oftentimes just comes from someone at one point in their life who told them they couldn't, or that they weren't good enough, or there's these feelings that developed because, acceptance was, manipulated by our
Yeah.
parents and caregivers and whatever else. And so it's always like that lack of belief that we initially have to kind of like deal with. And it's just what I find people need in this at this stage with this or this dream bully is like they just need reassurance. They need reassurance. And at the end of the day, even though we're giants, right? We're bigger, we're older, we've lived life, all these things have happened. There's still that inner child that is still there resting and like hold on to some of those things that we like really struggle with. And it's oftentimes the same story, the same belief, the same like anchor that has held us back that will always be there until we can create a sense of awareness. We can get reassurance enough even as an adult that we can kind of like peek on the other side of that little corner, and then feel okay, maybe I can. And then you take some actions and you start to prove to yourself that, oh yep, you can. And then like, oh, maybe I am deserving. And then you take some actions, you peek around that corner, oh, and you start to realize things, but then we're met with that next dream bully, which is doubt.
Mm.
We start to doubt. We start to doubt ourselves. We start to doubt what we're doing. We start to doubt, the steps that we're taking. And that's just like our subconscious, like reaching this little claw around the curve, like, hey, come back here where it's cozy and comfortable. We don't want you we want you outside the comfort zone, girl. Like, come back to mediocrity. It's so much safer. And that, we work through that. And like with doubt, it's just pouring into people and adding value and again, it's that reassurance, but the reassurance is different now. It's not the reassurance of taking the action. It's a reassurance of, helping them understand that like doubt is a normal feeling. And
Yeah.
like the more we work on ourselves and create awareness and remind ourselves of what it is that we're doing and chasing, the doubt is always going to creep in. It's just less, it's just not as loud. It's kind of like when our kids were little and they had those annoying toys that were really loud, like the button would go off and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, like who bought this for my child?" I don't know, like, but I used to take like here's tape and I'd put this tape over the speaker. That like even Zoom's excited about that.
Yeah, like, what?
I don't know what just happened. I put painter's tape over the speaker. The noise was still there, but it wasn't as loud. It wasn't as disruptive. It didn't trigger me as much. And that's the same thing that doubt, can do. So it's
Yeah.
still going to be there, but we just learn to understand that it's just like part of it. And grit is built when we can get over that little like doubt hump. faster and faster every time. And then we're met with that third belief bully, which is fear.
Mm, yeah.
It's fear. Like, I just say fear is doubt with its work boots on. Like, fear is just like it's just like doubt's like big ugly bully sister. She just like comes in for one last little round to see if she can track.
Right, right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So doubting our not having the belief system, doubt, fear, like not believing in yourself, like yeah, I can relate to all of that. I still show up in life and like honestly, I'm doing this course right now. It's this 10-week course like working on my new keynote. And I'm in this course and there's top level speaker speaks around the world. She's leading it and I'm trying to like really fit in the structure of what, she's saying. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like my confidence, I started to realize my confidence was actually going down. And I had to take a step back. And what I realized is I was just taking in all this feedback, right? Like there's feedback in the world and we just take it in. One thing that I know that I need to do, and I wasn't doing it, is I need to filter that feedback through my lens of authenticity because I have to do it how I'm meant to do things, but I'm supposed to take that feedback and recreate it into my own. And so I think that when I started getting the doubt and then I started to have the fear, like, who do I think I am to put this out in the world and these concepts that are kind of not widely accepted. And like I'm, the fear, doubt, doubt, doubt. And yeah, and then it goes back to my belief system. And when I really step back and step into who I am and what I know to be true and authentic in my life, this is where I need to go. This is what I need to do, as uncomfortable as it is, and step into that. But I think too that when we're filtering things in our life, that feedback that's coming in, when we're not keeping it in alignment with who we truly are, we can really get off track. And that fear and that doubt can stop us and will stop us. And I see it all the time with people. So, okay, so now we know it's the lack of fear and or I'm not black fear, the lack of belief, the doubt, and the fear. And you were saying like little stepping stones and keep going. What are some other tips that you have for people to like they're like, yeah, I keep trying, but it's just really hard for me.
Yeah, I wonder this is kind of like where like anticipation plays a major role. So here's most people come into things with expectation. Expectation of immediate result, expectation of immediate success, expectation after I put in a certain amount of time, it should look like this, right? But what we should do is switch out that expectation for anticipation. Like I anticipate this is gonna be challenging. I anticipate that
Oh, I like
be really uncomfortable. I anticipate that this is probably gonna take a while. I anticipate challenges. Like, when we can anticipate, it's kind of like if you know you're going to Disneyland for the weekend and the weather forecast is maybe some rain, when you can anticipate that, you take the ponchos, you know that's gonna be the case, you go in with a different, like, mindset and perspective versus if you went in the expectation it was gonna be the best trip to Disneyland ever, when it starts to raining, you're like, "Oh my gosh, all the money, and now we have to get and, like, you just become this, like, awful version of yourself versus, "Oh my gosh, like, aren't you guys so glad we brought ponchos? Isn't this fun? Who wants to go run in the rain?" And, like, "Well,
oh my gosh, I
but
love that.
the difference between putting expectations on yourself in situations and then, like, creating an anticipation of because when we do that, our perspective shifts and our mindset shifts, and we welcome the challenges. "This is supposed to be hard. Okay, so yeah." When the hard thing happened, it's like, "Oh, this was supposed to happen. This is awesome.
Yeah, I
Whew,
love
I'm on the right track." Versus allowing it to, derail us, and it's just this is why, like, for people, this is why coaches, this is why mentors, this is why podcasts, this is why all these things are so important. Like that growth is so important. Because the only reason I can just talk about it at this level is because I've been failing and sucking and like changing our expectations for anticipation 12 years straight. And I'm grateful for those experiences. Like none of lack of belief is never going to go away. Doubt is never going to go away. Fear is never going to go away. But as we continue to grow, we just get better at responding to it.
it.
Like, oh, yeah, of course this is scary. Like when I started the podcast, it was like, I know, when you have this idea, you like put it off for a really long time because you question all the things, lack of belief, and then get it rolling, and then you start to doubt, like, who am I? What if nobody wants to listen to what I'm going to share? And like, what if I
Yeah.
can't come up with enough content? And like doubt. And then you go to push the button in fear, and it's like, what if nobody downloads the episode?
Uh-huh.
What if I don't, what if I don't get what if this doesn't catch? What if this, it all's going to happen. And
Yeah.
you experienced that, but now it's like you have an idea, you're passionate about something, and you can't wait to get it out in the world because it's not so much about what the result is, but like getting it out there for that. If it impacts one person, if one person listens today to today's episode and is like, man, I needed to hear this my whole life, then like
Yeah.
we served.
Yeah. Yes. I know that's and that's the other thing. That's one of the things that I'm find to be I'm way better at is if it's in alignment with me and I put it out there, I honestly I don't have any expectation. Like I'll just use this podcast for example. My only expectation of this podcast was that there is a platform, a cloud that will hold this information. So when I first started the podcast, I could just quickly send these tips to my clients. That was my only expectation. I never dreamed like this podcast is like the top 20% of podcasts. And I have people messaging me all the time. Will you have this guest on? Will you have this guest on? You know how that goes. And like I never dreamed it would be like where it's at right now. But even now, I still don't have the only expectation I have is that I get content out there and it's out in the world for whoever's ready to grasp it and hold it. And so, I don't know. I think that I love that everything you just say. I think it's so fantastic. And I think we all need to have that because if we have these expectations, one, and we have these expectations that don't give us also the time to step into what we expect. I mean, we can have expectations and dreams and goals of like the sky's the limit. I believe that. But if you also don't meet that with the time that's needed to develop to get there, and like you said, expect challenges to come into play. Like there is going to be things that are going to come and that are going to trip you up. And when they do, it's meeting that with like, "Oh, hello, fear. I knew you were gonna show up. How are you?" Yeah, okay, yeah. So I think setting up those expectations, those anticipating those things is like really, really great advice. Okay, so what if somebody is right now, they're going to a job every day and they're not happy. But then they're like, I don't know what else I would do. 'Cause I find that, like, people have, like they want more, but yet they don't know what that more is. Is there any place where you would direct them or tell them to start, or what would you suggest to them?
It's kind of like a two-parter here. So there's one, I would say sit down with yourself and just write out. And I believe in writing and not just thinking, that brain
Yeah.
connection and like getting it out on paper. Like sitting down for a minute and just kind of like writing what it is that you want. What it is that you want. Because we think we want a bunch of things, but we don't really know to like get it out. Like, what is it at the end of the day that you really want? That if your life ended, you could be like, check, check, check. I'm like, me, if I died tomorrow, I would be so grateful that I had all the time I had with my kids, right? May not be, I don't care about what's in the bank account, right? It's more about like what I've created with my family. So like what is it that you really, 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 really want? Like what really matters to you? Because it may not be what you actually think it is, So I'd consider that. The second thing I would do is I would take yourself, your present self, to the 73-year-old version of yourself. And I say 73 because, the average life expectancy of like a woman is 73. Okay, we really should fix that because
Yeah.
I want to live.
Wait, that's my 80-year-old self.
I'm putting it out there. I want to be 103 years old. I want to like break through the tape. I don't want, you know what I mean? Like I want to be like Smucker. I want to be on the Today Show.
Yes, yes,
This old Smucker lady. Okay,
yeah. Um,
talking about the occasional Dr. Pepper and how I've lived so long. So but I want you to take yourself to that 73-year-old version of yourself and write a letter to who you are now, thanking you for all the things that you did, like, you know, um, the ways that you showed up in life, because through that one, you're going to have like an emotional connection with what matters most, but it's also going to help you pinpoint like what it is that really matters. And that's going to give you clarity to say, like, hey, this job really what I want? Do I really want to be working in an office 8 hours a day doing medical records? Or, do I really want to do this? Like, there's going to come a time where we hit that wall. It's like, is this really what I want out of life? And I have a lot of friends in education walking through that right now because the world of education has changed so much and they're doing so much more teaching. There's a lot more involved. And it's like, is this really what I signed up for?
Mhm.
And if you start to question, if you start to have that feeling, become curious. Become curious with where that's coming in from and what it really is. And it's okay to change directions. It's okay to want to pursue something different. Like I think it's an old mindset that like once you got into a career, you stayed with that career.
Yeah.
Um, I think that you have the ability to explore new avenues of life. I don't know that we were meant to be like one tracked our whole lives. I don't think anybody really was. We have giftings and we have natural skill sets and abilities and callings that I think that we're designed to pursue. And unfortunately, a lot of people end up in jobs that they never really wanted in the first place. It was parental,
Wow.
family, communication, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is giving yourself permission to shift and pivot at any point in your life. I mean, I left 18 years at the age of 40. You left at the age of 30. I left at the age of 40. There's people that leave at the age of 50. I mean, you look at like, some of these famous people that literally like didn't even step into their career until they were in their late 40s, 50s, even 60s. And so I think we actually need to do a better job of celebrating people that are older, that are starting new careers, that are starting businesses because we have this, the 20 under 30 or whatever, like the top, or the top 40 under 40. And it's like, we need to start celebrating people that are, like, literally shifting out of that, "Oh, I have to go to work. I have to work for this company for this many years, and this is the one thing, and I can't leave now because I've already been here for, like, 15 years." And it's, like, so incredible because, I mean, I was there. I had that mindset for a while until I didn't, but, yeah, I think we need to celebrate more of people that are stepping out and stepping up in their life at a later
Also,
age.
yeah, also disclaimer, we're not encouraging people to quit their jobs, but
Right, no, I mean, no, it's like you might gotta follow what you're excited about.
absolutely, and I think that's like what I think is like really cool about like I was 30, you were 40. Like we hit these chapters, like decades. I feel like are chapters of our story,
Yes.
and every chapter is a new part of the story. And we can reinvent ourselves where we are, or we can look to write a whole new chapter. And I think there's this thing that happens as we approach every decade. And it's kind of like we talked about giving yourself permission to failing, not putting an expiration date and not putting yourself on a shelf in terms of like limitations of what you can do with your life, but recognizing that at any given time you can shift, you can pivot, you can pursue what makes you happy. And honestly, at the end of the day, here's what I know. I know that most companies, most careers, you have an employee ID number and you take up room on an Excel sheet where payroll is computed.
Yeah.
When you go, a new employee ID number is issued and a new name goes in that slot. Like just poof, right? If 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 we think about things that way, if right now I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I'm not loving my job, I'm not fulfilled, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. I'm not like this is your life. Like nobody's going to stand up at your funeral and be like, "They were an amazing correctional officer. They were this, they were that." No, I mean, people are going to talk about who you were, and if your job has you in a position where you can't even be your authentic self, then like what's life even about?
Yep.
We're made for so much more than this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so, yeah, I agree. I think leveraging where you're at, I think, yeah, having a job where like, just give yourself permission to be who you are, wherever you're at. Because I think too, like, I did a talk, and this lady messaged, how they have those apps when you go to these conferences and people can message you, and my talk was on being your authentic self, and she was like, "What if I feel like I can't be who like my authentic self at work? Like who I truly am?" And so it's like that right there is a sign that either one, you need to like look into something different because you don't even feel comfortable. Like being at in a job, in a career, you should feel safe to be where you're at. And if you don't feel safe and you don't feel good where you're at, then there's some digging to do there. Why do you not feel like you can be your authentic self? Is this a confidence thing? Is this a leadership thing where you don't have, you can't be yourself? I mean, like really diving in and asking like a lot of questions without, I think without too judging ourselves and blaming ourselves or like, well, I shouldn't have had this career anyways, or oh, well, maybe I just need to like not be so funny. I can't be funny at work. Like, so it comes I think coming from a place of curiosity versus judgment also a great place to start as well.
Yeah, well, and I think too, people sometimes, a lot of times we want to blame the external factors of like why we can't be ourselves.
Right.
And instead of like, you just haven't you just haven't given yourself permission to just take ownership of some of the best things about you. Like I've always been known as like goofy, silly, loud, obnoxious, like I always say like I'm like an 11-year-old at heart, right? Like the things I think are funny and whatnot. And even in the most professional of spaces and environments that I've been in, people are like, I can't believe you're still say this or joke about this or laugh or tell these things or da da da. I'm like, well, that's who I am. Like,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
that's never going to change. And it's the biggest compliment when people are like, man, there's like, it's dual sided, right? Like when people are like, you have to reintroduce yourself to people because you're growing so much, they don't recognize you. But there's also that like dual sided compliment of like, yeah, she's been like that since high school. she's been Because then it just means you really just own those parts of yourself. So, like you talked to becoming curious, is it the environment that I'm in, or is it the environment I've created within myself
Mm, that's
that
good.
I'm not being who I am? And then just like try it out for a hot minute. If you're a jokester within the confines of what's appropriate for HR, be a jokester. Like if you're silly, if you're this, if you're that, if you're those things, just try it out for size. And what you might realize is one, we have a visitor. It's all good, and 2, there's not gonna be that, like, negative reaction that maybe you are expecting to take place when you are who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, before we depart, is there any last minute thoughts that you have for anyone who is looking to step up and step out in their life? What you would leave them with?
I would just first of all, I just wanna commend you for listening to this episode because if you're here and you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously in the pursuit of growing yourself, of learning and doing and creating awareness. So definitely stay on that track and just take the time to just, be again, I love that we've talked about becoming curious about yourself again. What it is that you want, what it is that matters to you, what it is that you really want your life to be about, and then just pursue that wholeheartedly and like we talked about unapologetically.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. So good. And surround yourself with those people that will help lift you up to that space too. I think I want to add that because that's a huge piece to it as
Yeah,
well.
give more power to the people who are encouraging and less power to the people who aren't, and just start paying attention to the way that people react or respond around you and know that every relationship that you have isn't one that you're meant to maintain. And we have the ability, just like we can shift our lives and the paths that we take, we have the ability to shift the circles that we put ourselves in too. And if you're really wanting to elevate your life and your way of being, then we also have to elevate the relationships that we have as well. Put yourself in the circles that you want to eventually lead.
Mhm. That's good. I love it. All right, Andrea, where can everyone connect with you and find you?
Oh my gosh, everywhere? No.
Yeah, I know it's like all the places. You get my name?
Yeah, everywhere. Google. No, for sure. No, you can find my podcast Brewing Success on every platform where podcasts are available. Connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. If you have any questions, I'm an open book, here to help, happy to serve. And I'm just so grateful for you asking me to be a part of this with you today.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, we'll have to have you on again sometime soon.
Yeah, sounds good.